You could sleep an enemy widow so that your widow could get a big pick.
He plays video games all day and his wife is fed up.
Hey, what's up? So this is the second part of my Ana guide where we tackle positioning, cooldown usage, and target prioritization. So we're doing cooldown usage in this video. I'm just going to jump right in. So all of Ana's abilities have high cooldowns, but have a high return to value ratio for said cooldown. I'm going to be talking about the basics of each cooldown, the general use scenarios, playmaking options, and just general tips for each one. First off is Ana's Sleep Dart. It has a 12-second cooldown, and it is a projectile. This means it has a travel time. It is, sorry, I'm looking at my thing, 60 meters per second. This doesn't really help me because I live in America. I don't really know what a meter is. So that is about 200 feet per second. If you want to practice with it, that's the same speed as Baptiste's Heal Orb and Genji's Shuriken. So if you need to practice with that. It will keep a target asleep for 5 seconds unless you wake them before the 5 seconds is up. It used to be where if you woke them before the 5 seconds was up, they would get a shorter animation for waking up. That is no longer the case, so it does not matter when you wake them up anymore if it's at the end of the animation or half a second in. They'll still have the same animation for waking up. That no longer matters. Okay, so general usage. You'll generally want to play conservatively with Sleep Dart. This is on paper. I'll get more into my feelings in a second. Play conservatively and use it selfishly. So on a Diving Winston, a Doomfist, or Tracer when they're really giving you problems. And to stop fight-winning ults, the perfect example is, Nano Blade, of course. But, a Bastional, a Nano Ryan charging in, something like that. Very easy scenarios where you go, oh, of course, that's where I use my blade. Your other option is if you're feeling extremely confident or the enemy team's not playing super aggressively to necessitate you using Sleep Dart, because you do want to be consistently getting value out of it. You can use it aggressively. You can use it to set up plays, so you could sleep the enemy Ryan, so your Ryan could get an easy shatter, make a big play. You could sleep an enemy Widow, so that your Widow could get a big pick. Or at the very least, you could just sleep someone for 5 seconds. You delay, if you're on defense, you delay the fight for 5 seconds, which is good. And like I said, only do this if the enemy is not diving on you. There's no chance you could get dove on or nothing bad will happen to you, something like that. Only good in this instance. But if that is the case, those are all fine. Or, if you're on attack, it would create a temporary 6v5 before they're woken up. You have 5 seconds, so you want to coordinate that before you do the sleep, not after. Personally, I use ML7's approach to using sleep darts versus CarQ, whereas CarQ is very methodical, and he'll only fire it off in an opportunity where it's definitely going to get value. Versus an ML7, he'll use it a lot closer to cooldown, and if he sees potential value at all, he'll just fire it off because he knows that even without Sleep Dart, he should be okay if he gets 1v1'd. But generally, what you'll want, like I said, I subscribe to ML7, but generally, you'll want to taper downwards over time instead of the other way around, which is, getting more aggressive with it. I'm not sure if I talked myself in a circle there, but I hope that made sense. So next up is her grenade. It will leave a buff that multiplies healing on any teammate for 1.5 times, and it will also negate healing for any enemy that it hits, or that it debuffs. It'll also heal you for 100 HP. Common terms I just like to throw out. I will always say I purpled someone if they're antied. So if you ever hear that, that's what that is. Quick tip that I actually just learned scrolling on the wiki. Having the healing multiplier on you, or the healing buff from the grenade, it actually affects shield generation. So heroes like Zenyatta, Zarya, and Sim that have those shields that regenerate over time, if they have that grenade on them, the buff, they'll regen 1.5 times faster. And same for enemies. With the debuff, they won't be able to regen shields. So it's a quick little thing I saw. You'll want to use nade as aggressively as possible. That's what I tend to do. Nade has ultimate levels of playmaking ability. When it comes to enemies being purple, it just completely throws a wrench into any playmaking that they were thinking of doing. Any dive they were coordinating just completely has to stop if someone's purple. It just can't happen, or they have to waste a Zarya barrier to cleanse it. Seeing as Zarya barrier is the only thing that can cleanse nade in the game. However, the caveat to this is you'll only want to be getting these purples when your team can actually make use of them, So if you purple the enemy supports, that's great and all, but if there's a lot of distance between the teams and you have a brawl type playstyle where there's no movement, in any of your team's abilities, there's no point to having made that purple. All you really did was waste the cooldown in what would be considered the poke phase by that point. So really, you're just kind of gimmicking yourself. Moving further on, you'll want to coordinate with your team and save the nade for big plays or sweeps. So if you have a nade like that, if you have a Zarya and you're planning to grab, or if your hog is planning to hook their hog, coordinate with your team. If you see that happening, or you see that it's about to happen, be like, hey, I'll save nade for grab. Let me know when you're going to grab, or hog, let me know when you're going to hook. I'll nade the hog. But moral of the story is, nade is one of the biggest abilities in the game, biggest playmaking potential. You want to be methodical with it. A little bit more methodical than sleep dart, depending on how the enemy team is acting. Finally is Nano. Nano's for ultimate. It costs 2,100 points, and the points are an accumulation of healing and damage. There's a lot of things to this. It increases 50% damage from whoever's nanoed. It heals them by 250 health. It adds a damage reduction of 50%. It has a cast time of 0.15 seconds and a duration of 8. I mentioned a lot of things right there. So first is the damage reduction, 50%. That is the maximum amount that can be given. So an example is Bastion. When he is in turret mode, he will not get any additional damage reduction by having those two together. 50% is the cap. And as I managed with the cast time, the 0.15 seconds cast time, it doesn't come into play too often, but I've had an instance. I'm actually going to try to put a clip in here if it is there, where you nano, and in between the nano shooting off getting to your teammate, you die, or the enemy or your teammate dies, and that cancels the nano, and it will not refund it. So it certainly can be accounted for, especially if you're utilizing that 250 heal for healing somebody that's low. It can come into play pretty often. So a lot like with Primal on Winston, you may not want to wait till the very, very, very last second. Maybe give a little bit of prelude and just give it a little bit of time before, a little bit of leeway area there, just so you don't get your nano canceled. So the easiest usage for nano is, of course, a high risk, high reward ult like Nano Blade, Nano Blossom. Those are easy stuff. Everybody knows that, I'm sure. Other options are nanoing Ryan or Winston to give your team an edge in the. You could do it in the front part of the fight. As soon as the fight starts, you'll want to do it just after poke phase. You don't want to make your tank initiate with it. Then the enemy team can react to it. You want to make sure the fight is pretty much happening so that they can't react to it and change their playstyle before the fight's really started. But yeah, nano your main tank or something like that. You could also nano your off tank if they're doing really well. Your Zarya's been consistently high charge, he's doing really well. Or if your hog's looking for a hook, you could either of them. A more instance version is with hog. If Raita's hog lands a hook, you can nano him. He'll generally be able to one shot. I'm gonna assume most heroes below 250 HP. Maybe even anyone a little above that. I can't really think of anyone off the top of my head. Or anyone that has a decent neutral game. I used hog in this example, but also soldier. Right as the enemy's committing and maybe he's on high ground or flanking, right as the enemy commits, you can nano soldier. He has such a good neutral game that even if you nanoed him while he was ulting, it wouldn't really be all that different, especially with his recent changes. Or in a worst case scenario, you could nano your other support. If they're critical, say you're in the last fight and it's LUCIO and they have beat. If LUCIO's won and there's really no one else that you need to nano, or maybe you're in fight or flight, you got to do something, you can nano your LUCIO. People will generally call it out as a throw nano, but if it keeps your other support up and they have ult or they could make a play, do it if you have to. Who cares what they say as long as you win? However, you do want to coordinate with your team about what you're going to do. At least try to have a plan, even if you get away from it during the fight. At least say, Ryan, I'm planning to nano you. At least say, Ryan, I'm planning to nano you, or Winston, if you want to dive, I'll nano you in. Something like that. Just make sure your teammates know, even if it's just a couple seconds before you're going to nano. Because nanos where you don't tell them, people can get really caught off guard. They can play really shaky, or maybe they won't have cooldowns. You don't know that. So just, communicate with Nano. Absolutely. That's pretty much it. This is just a quick little thing on her cooldowns. I'll try to be doing more advanced tutorials in the future, but up next will be target prioritization. I'll try to do that pretty soon. But otherwise, thank you for watching.